lawful source of income. Session number 1. Today, I would like to thank our presenters for coming. We have Wilson Kimball, President and CEO of the Municipal Housing Authority for the City of Yonkers. Wilson Kimball served as Commissioner of Planning and Development for the City of Yonkers since 2013. Prior to her tenure as Yonkers Planning Commissioner, Kimball served as Senior Vice President of Operations for the Hugh L. Carey Battery Park City Authority in the City of New York. She has also served as counsel to First Lady Libby Pataki, advising her on policy issues, including economic development, women and children's health, and tourism. Kimball holds a BA in government from Skidmore College and an MBA in finance from Peace University, Lubin School of Business. She also holds a JD from Fordham University School of Law, where she was named Stein Scholar and editor of the International Law Journal. A resident of Yonkers, Kimball currently serves on the boards of the Business Council of Westchester, Yonkers Industrial Development Agency, Community Planning Council, and Phillips Manor Hall. Thank you for joining us, Wilson Kimball. I'd also like to welcome our presenters, Marcy Ciufatelli. And Marcy is the Leased Housing Director for the Municipal Housing Authority for the City of Yonkers, and Jennifer Martinez, the Assistant Leased Housing Director for the Municipal Housing Authority of City of Yonkers. Thank you for joining us today. If you'd like to ask some questions, please be sure to put them in the Q&A and we will address them. Now I'll hand it over to Wilson. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us today. And thank you for that kind introduction. I started as president and CEO last April in the throes of COVID here at Macy. The general situation at Macy is that we own 18 separate properties around Yonkers, and we manage and own over 1,770 units of senior and family housing. And we also administer, actually Marcy and Jennifer administer over 4,000 Section 8 vouchers for individuals throughout our city who and elsewhere. We have a staff of approximately 100 people, and we have interesting factoids that we can track down. Like last year, for instance, 170 families ported in to Yonkers with Section 8 vouchers, and about approximately 100 families ported out to other municipalities around the country as they are allowed to do under Section 8. Our Section 8 voucher program has not been open. The waiting list has not been open for almost a decade. And because of Marcy and Jennifer's leadership, we believe that we will be able to open the waiting list either by the end of the year or by early next year, which is a huge accomplishment. And they are at the forefront of making all of this happen. So on top of that, last year we had a backlog of certifications and recertifications for families, largely due to just the immense volume that they deal with, but also due to COVID situations. HUD was not letting us go into units and certify them in the usual manner. We've been under a massive $750 million rental assistance demonstration renovation project, and we're coming to the tail end of that. It's been a 5-year program, and we are literally just finishing it now. It's been very complicated. We've had to move because of COVID and other construction limitations. We've had to move families in and out of buildings, reposition them, right size their units. It's been extremely tricky. And so for the first time in 4 years, we're actually caught up with all the certifications. It's been a huge endeavor. A lot of people have worked from home. They've worked with raising their children. And it's been extremely challenging, but I couldn't be more proud of Marcy and Jennifer and their team. And so they are definitely the right people to, provide you with answers to your questions today. should I be introducing Marcy? I don't know. Marcy, do you want to say a few words about yourself?
Okay. Hi, everybody, and thanks again for having us today. My name is Marcy Schifatelli. I am the Leased Housing Director for Macy's Voucher Program. I've been here for 17 years, and I think that what we do is very important. Housing is very important work, and we're so glad to talk to you today about this important topic. As Wilson mentioned, we do have a pretty large portfolio of vouchers, and our goal is to fully utilize our program. And while we do have about 800 participating landlords, we're always looking to establish relationships with more in the community that are interested and want to work with us. So this comes at a good time to meet with you guys. Hopefully you'll learn a little bit about our program and be able to help our families have access to additional affordable housing opportunities in the community. I'm going to talk a little bit about the program, and then when Jennifer comes on, she will go into more detail about the income sources and the demographics and things like that. So as Wilson said, we have about 4,000 vouchers, and what we do is we provide we provide rental assistance utilizing federal funds. This is a choice voucher program, and the key word is choice. Our families, once they're determined eligible, have the ability to choose the housing that they want as long as it's within program guidelines, and which means that units have to meet housing quality standards, and there's payment standards based on each individual family's composition. In addition to providing the rental assistance, we also have service coordination. We have partnerships with Family Service Society of Yonkers, and they provide our residents with general service management, referral to community service providers, youth activities, Meals on Wheels, things of that nature. And for our voucher participants, it's more along the lines of case management. They can assist the voucher participants with obtaining documentation that's needed for recertifications, home visits, connecting them with resources to deal with hoarding issues and things of that nature. Again, we do work with, on the federal level with HUD. We also work with HGAR, basically for the tax credit component of our managed properties. We, of course, work with City of Yonkers and community agencies that also serve our families, like the Office of the Aging, Westchester Disabled on the Move, and other agencies like that. So what are housing choice vouchers? The technical term is it's a form from HUD that says the family's name, their voucher size, and the time frame that they have to find a suitable apartment that they want to lease. Basically, this document is to be shown to landlords, realtors, brokers that says this is an eligible family that is a voucher holder, and they will be eligible for rental assistance. The participant at that point is deemed eligible, meaning that they've already gone through our screening with the housing authority, background check, income eligibility, and they're ready to look for housing. The voucher can be used in the City of Yonkers, but it is also a portable voucher, meaning that any jurisdiction outside of Yonkers where there's a housing authority, the family can move to if that's their choice. Our goal is to keep people in Yonkers because we love Yonkers. Regarding subsidy payments, that's the difference of the contract rent and the family payment. And the family payment is 30% of the adjusted gross income, not to exceed 40%. Why this is important is if you think about what happened over the last year, a lot of landlords, while some tenants had some issues paying their rents, they had a guaranteed source of income. The subsidy payments were coming in, and since the subsidy payment is based on the family's income, when their family's income went down, either through loss of employment or other situations, the subsidy payment went up. So that is a good benefit to the landlords. And then finally, what are our responsibilities? So our responsibility is to administer the program on a local level in the city of Yonkers in accordance with HUD guidelines. Our roles with the families are to recertify them annually, obtain, verify, and calculate their income, accurately calculate their family portion of the rent, make sure we inform them of all of our policies and any changes in our policies or requirements. Our responsibilities as far as landlords is making sure that all of the units are inspected and that they meet housing quality standards. Also that we make our payments to the landlords monthly. And Jennifer's going to get more into the tenants' responsibilities and landlords' responsibilities when she talks. But after this, I'm happy to put in the chat feature some links that would give you more information on some of the things I talked about relating to our program, any rules or notices, HUD websites, and things like that that would be helpful for you to have more information. And again, thank you for having me. Jennifer.
Thank you, Marcy, and thank you to the ladies before me for that brief introduction. I am Jennifer Martinez again, and I'm the Assistant Lease Housing Director and work hand in hand with Marcy and Wilson in the administration of the Section 8 program. I've been with Macy, our acronym, for 4 years. And Marcy mentioned that we have service coordination for our residents. So I was a service coordinator for a few years prior to coming on board with Macy. So let me tell you a little bit about what the responsibilities are for the tenants. So as Marcy mentioned, we do the eligibility of the tenants, right? We review whether this family would qualify for the housing assistance. And the review for the qualification, it's not just based on what you tell me. This is going to be a formal form. There's going to be documentation that we collect on income and assets. There's going to be cross-referencing between the information that they provide us and also other local, state, and federal entities that we get to cross-reference the information with their social security number. So we are very there's a level of accountability here in when we're doing these certifications. So the tenant responsibility is to provide this documentation on a yearly basis and on a timely basis. We do recertify yearly to make sure that the participants are still eligible for the assistance. They're responsible for complying with the lease regulations that the landlords have. And the reason why the landlords are the ones that have the leases and not us is because different properties have, different setups and different things that they have going on. So the landlords do provide the leases and the tenants are to comply with those leases. Another responsibility that the tenants have is to allow access to the units, right? How many times have landlords been in a situation that they need to fix an apartment or they need to come in to do an inspection? The tenants are responsible for allowing access to the unit. As far as landlords' responsibilities is concerned, landlords can screen the participants, right? We screen participants under our regulations, under HUD regulations, but landlords have the right to do their own screening. If the landlords want to do a background check, you go ahead and do a background check. You treat these families just like you would treat any other family applying for an apartment. Responsibilities, the landlord responsible for providing a contract and for providing a safe living place, and also to enforce the lease regulations, right? Landlords are responsible for enforcing the lease regulations. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about who are our families. In general, people may not necessarily know what a family who's receiving Section 8 looks like. And in this sense, I'm not talking about what we look like physically speaking, but what's the demographics of this family, the whole picture, the global picture. What does this family composition look like? What kind of sources of income do they have? So I prepared a report for you, a quick report with some graphics to show you what those families look like. Remember how Marcy mentioned that we are on the HUD regulations. Well, we have to report to HUD who are the families who are on our program. And this is a very formal process. This goes through a software system that connects with HUD, and that's how I'm going to be presenting the data here today. Am I allowed to share the screen? Let's see.
Yes, you can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So let me try that. Okay, so the report that I'm going to share with you, it's a report that doesn't show you everybody that we have in the system, but it shows you about 3/4 of the families that we have in the system, or a little more than that. So the report here is for 3,885 families. And right now we have about 4,300 families. So we're a little short of the whole picture, but this will give you a very good idea of what our families look like. As Wilson mentioned earlier, not only do we manage about 1,800 units that used to be public housing and are now owned by private landlords, then we also have the Section 8. In the end, all the units are subsidized by Section 8. So let's start here. What kind of income or where in the category of area median income do our families fall under? So according to this report of almost 4,000 families, most of our families are in the extremely low income bracket. And that means they're under the 30% of the area median income. And you would ask yourself, okay, 30% of the area median income, it's kind of low, but where is this income coming from? Let's take a look. Let's put a dollar amount, a figure amount to the under 30%. So according to our chart here, a high percentage of our families are in the $10,000 to $15,000 a year. And you may think, how does someone survive like that? And what kind of income do you have to just have about $15,000 a year? Well, according to my experience and what I've seen, if you're making about $15,000 a year, you're probably on Social Security, because that's more or less the higher amount that's being paid by Social Security, retirement, and Social Security, the supplement security income, which is for people with disabilities. So about 30% of our families are on Social Security, which is a fixed source of income, which during the pandemic, they were still getting this money, right? Then about 30% of our families actually have above $25,000 a year. Still, you would think, what is $25,000 a year? That sounds to me like some people are on minimum wage. Because if you do the math for $15 an hour, times 35 hours a week, 52 weeks, that's about $27,000. So most of our families are either working, right, working families, or are on fixed income from Social Security, right? Now take a look at this again. Gives you a better picture, not just the figure of the dollar amount, but again, where is this money coming from, right? 59% of our families are right here, Social Security income, pension, right? And then 47% of our families are any other type of income. 36% of our families have, they have some sort of wages going on. Now, look at how many families are on welfare. Is a very low amount of the families who are actually on welfare. And I like to bring this point because the general population tends to think that the families that are recipients of this type of subsidies or this type of help are people who are not working, who are on welfare, and they're not working and are on welfare because they're lazy. And I'm being honest here and straight to the point in what people think. Well, we have some families that fall under that category, but that's not most of our families. And I think it's important to point this out, because when a family with Section 8 gets denied the opportunity for housing, you're getting denied, you're denying, or not saying you, but the society is denying the opportunity to people who need it the most, and people who are able to live independently, right? People who are able to live independently. Again, because somebody is paying 30% of their income towards rent doesn't mean that they're going to necessarily be renting an apartment for $900 or $1,000. Some of these families qualify to be renting an apartment that's worth, $2,000, $2,500. We'll pay the difference. All we're asking for the realtors and the community in general is to think outside the box, and we're here to kind of help you demystify what a family under Section 8 looks like. I'll share a little more, and then we can probably open for questions. How much money are people paying towards rent, right? A good amount of people are paying between $200 and $350 per rent. That's their portion of the rent, right? Because remember, if most people are making less than $25,000 a year, 30% of that income kind of falls under that category. So they were paying up to $350 a month. We are paying the rest, right? Okay, family composition. What does our family, what do our families look like? Well, about 1/3 of our families are elderly with no children, right? About another third, that's 1,000, are elderly with children. So we have a lot of grandparents raising their children. Right? Then you have a few families here. Let's see, race and ethnicity. Again, who are the people who we are serving, right? 57% of our people are consider themselves as white, right? Another 41% are Black and African American. 60% of our people consider themselves to be Hispanic, 40% non-Hispanic. And then let's see, ages, right? We have about 2/3 of our families fall between 18 and 50. So most of our families, yes, you need to have an adult as a head of household, but most of our families are adults with some children. And then how many people are in each one of our families, right? Again, going back to the thoughts or the general population, it's not always going to be a single mom with a lot of kids. Yes, we have some single moms. We're here to help them, but most of our families are single households. Most of our families are single households, one-person households. And then you have, a few larger families, more families with 2 people, right? It could be a couple. If we have a lot of people who are seniors, a lot of them are couple, right? Let's see what else we have here. And the number of bedrooms, okay? Again, because you have most people who are single occupants, then most of our units are 1-bedroom units. But we have the whole spectrum. We have between 1, sorry for the background noise, I'm on my way to the airport. I'm so sorry. So we have an array between 0 bedrooms to 4 and 5 bedrooms. Okay, few 5 bedrooms, but mostly between 1, 2s, and 3s, and then a few 4s and 5s. In length of stay, okay. Most of our families stay with us anywhere between 2 to 5 years. This is the gray picture that you can see here, between 2 to 5 years. Remember, we recertify every year. So every year we're updating this information. This is not information from 10 years ago. This is information that I pulled this week. Most of our people stay with us 2 to 5 years. Some people stay less than 1 year. What does that mean? That doesn't mean that you are going to lose the income because this family left the program. This means some of these people are graduating from the program, right? They have adult children, or they have adults who go to school, get an education, increase their income, and they move on. Then they make way for another family who needs the service. What does that mean for you as a realtor or as a landlord? Well, if you have a unit that you place under Section 8 and your family moves out, well, guess what? If you're willing, we're going to give you another family, because there's a high need for housing in a very low stock in affordable housing. So if you have a family after their lease is up and they graduated from the program and they move on to other things, we have another family for you. And the turnaround of those units is very quick. During the pandemic, we implemented a couple of different technology tools that are helping us process applicants a lot quicker, right? So I mentioned income, assets, and having to provide this documentation. This takes time, but we're doing a lot faster. The turnaround of these units is quick. So if you have a family who graduated from the program and that unit, you want to rent it to another Section 8 family, we have that. We can help you with that. So this is pretty much a summary of demographics of what, who are our families and what do our families look like. I hope that with this information, if you didn't have an idea, now you have an idea that yes, most of these people are people, and again, being upfront, I understand that some people are concerned that, oh, some people may take advantage of the system or some people don't really need it. That's everywhere. That's everywhere. That's not just here. You run the same risk when you are renting to a private tenant. You're not running any higher risk with our families than with any other. Quite the opposite, right? During the pandemic, how many landlords haven't been getting paid? How many people who did not qualify for subsidies or didn't have subsidies lost their jobs, unfortunately couldn't pay the rent? If our families lost their job, we process, a change in what their portion of the rent is. Our portion of the rent goes up and you still get paid, right? Not to say everyone has to comply with the regulations. Landlord has to comply with the regulations and provide a safe environment. And the tenants have to comply with the regulation, we provide the documentation. But we have grown, and we haven't been growing because we're not doing the right thing, right? So we're growing because we're doing the right thing. More and more landlords are getting involved into assisting families with Section 8, but we're still not where we need to be. We still have some families with Section 8 vouchers looking for 3-4 months and being told no at the door just because they have Section 8. Not even knowing, not even giving them the benefit of the doubt. What kind of income do you have? Social Security? What does that even mean? You already pay your dues. You're on Social Security, a pension. I'm gonna give myself a little bit because there's noise back here.
Thank you, Jennifer. And anyone who wants to know about the increasing need of affordable housing in Westchester can look at the Westchester County Affordable Housing Report that was done in 2019, in which it indicated about 13,000 units are needed across the county. And the largest percentage is needed for 65 and older, the elderly, although if you're 65, you're not elderly, but the elderly, definitionally, the elderly and the frail elderly, which is 85 or above, which seems to be one of the largest and fastest growing segments of our population. And we work very hard to keep our seniors here because they want to age in place, as we all do. So that's one of the demographics that we're all very cognizant of. So, I mean, at this point, we'll take any questions or open it up to anything anyone wants to delve into.
So I am seeing a lot of thank yous. One question I have is there currently a waiting list for people to get into subsidized housing?
So when I got here, there was a waiting list. Marcy probably about 8,000 people.
15.
And we have culled it through mailing out to people, and also through technology, Rent Cafe, and signing people up. And we've culled it down to less than 2,000, which we think is where we're headed towards reopening the waiting list. And there is a website called affordablehousingonline.com, which has all the programs that are open across the country. So I often tell people if they are looking for Section 8 vouchers, but they can't find them in Yonkers, maybe they can participate in a program in Georgia or Long Island or Alaska, and for whatever reason, get their voucher through that program online and then port it here to Yonkers or Westchester or wherever, the Hudson Valley. Because as we discussed, these vouchers are portable. So as long as you can get one, you can pretty much take it anywhere.
Another question is, I thought landlords cannot deny a tenant because of the source of income or payment.
That's true, they can't. It's the Fair Housing Act, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And we're very grateful to several brokers who worked very hard in the Hudson Valley to get Westchester to have full disclosure as to why people are turned down for their co-ops, because it's part and parcel of the same attitude and sort of ignorance about who the tenants are. And so it can be masquerading in many forms, but people nonetheless can get turned down.
If a landlord does refuse Section 8, what is the next step?
Marcy, do you want to?
So if the landlord refuses Section 8, that is something we would definitely have to take a deeper look into to make sure that there was no discrimination at play. And we do take discrimination very seriously. While we can't force anybody to take Section 8, we do oftentimes intervene and try to develop a relationship with that landlord and encourage them to participate in our program.
Great.
Let me just add that we're also seeing some municipalities, and obviously we're in Yonkers, so I can speak to the relationship we have with the city of Yonkers. Mayor Mike Spano knows that we need more affordable housing, so we have been working with his office to address it in many different ways. So whether it's the affordable housing ordinance, which currently is at 10% of market rate buildings, new buildings have to include 10% inclusionary zoning, or it's different programs he's looking to roll out, one of which might be to give a grant to different landlords who need to make small improvements so that their secondary unit or their third or fourth unit, if it's a 2-family house, maybe it needs a new kitchen, maybe it needs a new bathroom. That grant would help the landlord improve the unit to the point where it would pass a housing quality services inspection, and then that would be available for affordable housing tenants.
Great. Again, people are very grateful to learn, and especially a lot from what Jennifer was saying. And people just don't understand that, for the most part, it's pretty much guaranteed money. And that's the sticking point that seems to be missed by so many. The question is, how is it that we can try to get this information out better, to help people understand, and also to try to steer away from that implicit bias that the people who are receiving these vouchers are not people who are not working. A lot of them are, according to the statistics, but it's just not, that story part is just not getting out. And how is it that could we make that better?
So, I'm not sure what you want to do as an organization. Obviously, we would do anything to partner with you to get that message out. We have hired Thompson & Vendor as our PR company, and we have been, buying up media time and running ad campaigns, and they're on our website. So if you want to go to macy.org, they're there. But we have been reaching out in trade publications to re-educate people on who our tenants are and why our tenants are a benefit to landlords. So, any of that advertising should be on our Macy website. And, we can get any of that information over to any of you who need it. But we do firmly believe that, especially during COVID, landlords should understand that this is a guaranteed income. And as Jennifer said, and as Marcy said, if our tenants' income goes down, they come to us and we adjust what we give them. So they're always getting what they need to pay their rent. There's never a question of that.
How long, you had said that if someone, was working and they lose their job, then you guys will reassess. How long does that reassessment from a time frame take?
It's fairly quickly. So our rules are that any changes to household composition, income, or assets have to be reported within 10 days. So immediately upon receiving that change, we make the change as soon as possible, especially when there's a decrease in the family's income. Great.
Again, I'm getting rave reviews from our audience. Do other people have any other questions that they'd like to please ask? Everyone's very shy today.
Well, I
Any
mean, you
other?
know,
Go ahead.
we're always here. We're always here and we're always available, and our website, you know, it has all of our contact information. And so as issues or challenges or problems arise, please reach out so we can help you and your clientele help us, right? It's the win-win if we're all working together to get people housed in Westchester and in the Hudson Valley.
So the question is, I thought landlords could not ask for credit or background since it has been done by you.
Oh, I will take that one. Sorry, trying to unmute myself. Okay, so we do not run a credit check. We do a background check for criminal history. Obviously, we deny admission if there's anybody that's subject to a lifetime sex offender registry, or if they were convicted of methamphetamine production. But we do not screen for credit or rental history because we are trying to be inclusive, and obviously we're serving very low income families in most cases, and the goal is to get them housed. The landlords do have the right to request credit and rental history because they're responsible for the overall property management of their building or their property. So they can look for that information. What they can't do is they can't say, I won't rent to you because you receive SSI, I want a working family, or I won't rent to you because you have children and I want a single person. Those are the kinds of things that they definitely cannot do. But they can look at your rental history and your credit.
So how can credit or rental history disqualify for a specific unit? Is it mostly due to the criminal activity, or?
So that landlord could pass on that participant if their credit history or their rental history is not great. That doesn't disqualify them from the program. What that would mean is that they need to get a new request for lease approval package that would allow them to go look for another unit. The only grounds for disqualification for the housing authority is, as I said, if they're subject to a lifetime sex offender or if they were convicted of production of methamphetamine.
Perfect. Will you report instances of potential fair housing violations to fair housing agencies?
Yes, we are required to report that. We have the forms listed on our website. If anybody ever wants to report fair housing discrimination, they could always make their complaint to us if they feel they've been discriminated against. We make sure that in all of our briefing packets and our applications that people understand that they have the right not to be discriminated against and what their resource is if they feel they've been discriminated against.
Another question that we have is, it was explained to me that if a client's rent is being paid 100% by guaranteed funds, i.e. Section 8 or DSS, that the credit cannot be run. Is that correct?
I've never heard that before. I would have to look into that a little further and get back to you.
Okay.
I've never heard of that, but we can get back to you on that. Just on the flip side of the fair housing thing, the other thing is what happened, another sort of on the flip side question is what happens if people think that there's Section 8 fraud happening? And we've had 2 cases of that since I've been here, reported, but not found to be true. Nonetheless, it goes to the Inspector General, and here in Yonkers, it goes to the Inspector General. We refer the cases, they investigate, and if they were to find them to warrant it, it would go to the district attorney. So, there's also that, just so people know that, you can't just beat the system, Section 8, because there are legitimate families that need these vouchers. And obviously, no one wants to participate in any kind of fraud.
Marcy, I am going to ask some of the questions that you have answered, just because some of the audience didn't see those. So can rental housing choice vouchers be used to purchase a home, i.e. purchasing a unit from the housing authority? Could this be something a realtor can assist with?
So we don't have a home ownership program anymore. It's on our goals list. We want to implement a home ownership program in the future. There are other housing authorities in the local area, CVR, for example, that took over the Westchester County voucher program. They administer a home loan program. So a participant or applicant would have to port their voucher to that housing authority that has a home ownership program, and the voucher could be used to purchase a home.
And where can we find certified housing for people without having to call every landlord?
So the most obvious resource for us is gosection8.com. A lot of landlords list their apartments there, and most of our tenants utilize that website. We get listings all the time, landlords that are already participants, or they're new to Yonkers, they purchase buildings, they'll send us apartment listings. So you could always reach out to the housing authority and ask us if we have anything available, but mostly gosection8.com and websites similar to that.
Great. Does the voucher include the tenant's required maximum contribution?
No. So the voucher basically just says what the voucher payment standard will be. So it'll say, let's just say the family has a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom, it'll say 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom, and that just means that the family is going to be, the contract rent can be up anywhere from 100 to 110% of that size FMR.
And how much on a Section 8 are responsible for rental price monthly?
Participant, you mean?
Correct.
So they are responsible for 30% of their adjusted gross income towards the contract rent.
Unless they're 100% voucher, correct?
Right. Well, since it's an income-based program, if they had no income, then we would be subsidizing 100%. But if they have some source of income, it would be 30% of their adjusted gross income. That would be the family share, and then we would subsidize the difference between the contract rent and the family share.
And what is the time frame to process a new family to become eligible for subsidized housing?
So Jennifer, I don't know if you can take that one.
So when we meet with our families, actually before the pandemic, we used to do everything in person. Now it's much quicker because we are able to use electronic tools. So we can email, we have Brain Cafe where the applicants can submit all their documentation. I'll say there isn't a specific amount of time because it would depend on the documentation, and also we need to do inspections for the units. But I'll say it could be around 30 days or less.
Is there a fine or legal action for landlords who discriminate?
So I don't have a lot of experience with fair housing or any kind of claims made to me for fair housing. I don't know what results. I do know that is illegal, and I would imagine that there's some kind of penalty. I don't know, Wilson, if you can speak to that more.
I don't know whether there's a finding, and if there's a finding, if that has a set value to it, or if it depends on the egregiousness of the, discrimination, like against a family or against seniors or against a bigger family size, or I'm not familiar with any of that. We could probably get back to you on that.
Some concerns from landlords that I service is that after they've rented to Section 8 and the lease expires, that they do not allow to increase the rent.
The landlords are eligible for a rent increase. They have to submit that request in accordance with our program rules, which is 60 days before the expiration of their existing lease. All rents are subject to what's called a rent reasonable, where we take the subject unit and we compare it to 3 other units in the area that are unassisted to determine if the rent that's being requested is reasonable. But we don't typically deny a rent increase, except for issues, if there's issues with the apartments meeting housing quality standards, if they're consistently failing, things of that nature. But rent increases are allowed, and they're allowed on an annual basis.
Does your organization refer families to the realtors? Or do you guys just work within your own?
So that's a slippery slope, because like we said, this is a choice voucher program. So they have the right to choose their housing. If that means that they want to go through a realtor or a broker, they can do that. They can go Section 8. They can ask us for participating landlords. But I don't know that we necessarily refer them to realtors, because that would incur an expense, and we do not cover realtor fees or broker's fees. So that would be their choice.
So the number on the voucher is the limit that the tenant can pay, including their own contribution?
So the voucher, actually, the number that's on the voucher only indicates the voucher payment standard that the family is eligible for based on their family composition. So it just means that if it's a 2-bedroom voucher, we can pay up to 110% of the 2-bedroom FMR. It's not the maximum that they can pay. The maximum that a family can pay is 40% of their adjusted gross income, because anything after that would be considered a rent burden.
Okay. And so I think we sort of asked this before, but what happens if the landlord does deny the applicant due to credit? Can the tenant go back to you guys to?
Yes, we would definitely give them another application to start looking for an apartment. And in most cases, we have given them lists of landlords. We've referred them back to Go Section 8 just in case there's anything on there that they're interested in.
So the question is, so Section 8 is a good program. The problem is the tenant not paying their 30%. How does that get handled?
Okay, so yeah, that is a challenge. I would say that there's a small percentage of our participants where that's an issue. They are one of the obligations for HUD, the tenant obligations under HUD is that the family pays their portion of the rent. They're supposed to document proof every time they come in for recertifications that their portion of the rent is up to date. If they ever wanted to move either in Yonkers or out of our jurisdiction, one of the requirements is that they pay their share of the rent. So the stakes are high for them not to pay their portion. And if we do get documentation from the landlord, or the landlord lets us know that they're not paying their rent, we do send them violation notices. And in some cases, we have brought them in for an informal hearing to see what's going on. And in a lot of cases, we've seen that families have lost income and we're not sure who to contact, or it was just a matter of reporting a change, and once their rent was readjusted, the issue could be resolved. But it's not a real high percentage of our participants that are not paying their rent.
Okay. One of our attendees has said, I had thought and had received a commission from the program. If the agency won't pay and the tenant is unable to, would it be discriminatory to not service them?
We did have a couple special projects like the Calcano project, Marcy, where there were a series of benefits that those particular participants and tenants were offered. And that particular project was not your typical Section 8. There was some construction being done. So it is possible that Ms. Leah had been part of that effort that we had going on, where some realtors were paid a commission because they assisted some families under a project that was under construction. That it's not, though, the typical day-to-day operation for Section 8.
Yeah, so the reason that was because when we did the rental assistance demonstration, $750 million investment in the properties that we manage, some of them were Section 8 and some of them were Section 18, which is a lesser known program, which is considered a demolition and disposition. And in Calcagno, we did not knock down the buildings, which is a Section 18 demo and dispo. And so in that particular circumstance, instead of knocking down the buildings, we basically gut renovated them, and we're still doing it now. And under Section 18, we had a broader range of authorities in which we could pay brokers and pay relocation costs. That was the sort of the benefit side. The negative side to our tenants, I guess I would say, is under a traditional Section 8 renovation under the RAD program, the tenants had the right of return. Under Section 18, they technically do not have the right of return. So our tenants who lived in Calcagno do not have the legal right to return. That is not how we're running it. We're actually allowing the tenants who want to return to that property to do it. But because that was actually Section 18, which is a little bit different, we were able to offer different benefits to those tenants as we moved them around during construction.
So can participants be evicted for non-payment of their portion of rent?
Yes, they can. And also, if they are evicted for non-payment of rent, they can also lose their housing voucher.
Okay.
Not in all cases. I mean, before we terminate anybody, there's a hearing process, and if there's, good cause, obviously they can maintain their housing. But in most cases, if they're evicted for non-payment of rent, for blatantly not paying their rent, then they can lose their voucher.
And just to tweak that one shade more, it's not during the eviction moratorium, right? That's not
Right.
one of the ways that they can be evicted. The only way we have gotten tenants evicted under the eviction moratorium is through a criminal act. And I think there was perhaps one tenant on one of our properties out of the whole 1,700. And he was not even a tenant. He was a COVID caregiver.
Okay. This is my own question. So does a landlord have to be registered somewhere to be able to participate, to be able to accept a Section 8?
No. If he or she purchases a building or a property and they want to participate in the program, they would just have to give us their information. Give us a call, let us know that they purchased this property. We'll tell them the documents that are needed in order for them to be put into our system, and the rest is history.
Gotcha.
The Go Section 8, I'm sorry, the Go Section 8 is a resource where landlords can advertise that they have units. And in that way, people who have the vouchers and are looking for units can go in there and look at what's available.
And so one question is asked by one attendee and answered by another, but I'll just share it for those who are not looking at the questions. Is the client responsible for the full broker's fee, or do you provide assistance? And basically, I think what has been said is that some programs pay a broker's fee and some do not. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, the Section 18 situation was very unique. Generally, we don't. That was a very concentrated effort by us to work under this construction situation. I would say the other thing that the brokers should know is that I also sit on the Zoning Board of Appeals. And so some of my colleagues on that are brokers. And sometimes they might sell a multifamily house because that's what they do. They're not like a rental broker. But then as soon as they sold the house, then they call me and they say, oh, look, I just sold a 3-family. Could the buyer, reach out to you and get 2 Section 8 families for the other 2 units or something? So, we're willing to work with brokers who do that, or there's like there's brokers who work for big developments like the RXRs and the Avalon Bays and the other big properties. And at least in Yonkers and in most of the county, there's an inclusionary zoning. So there's at least a 10% affordable housing ordinance. So there are affordable units in those buildings too, even though they're market rate buildings. So we've worked with all kinds of brokers who represent all kinds of clients. And so I would remind you just to, not limit yourself to what you think we can help you with, but think about all the different ways we can help you.
So here's another question. I thought that if an apartment is advertised anywhere, the voucher holder can see any units?
Yes, they definitely can. We just utilize Go Section 8, but it's not mandatory. They do not have to take an apartment that's listed there. They can either through their own contact or through a realtor or broker or any other means, they can find any housing that they choose.
And so I take it that the Go Section 8 website, landlords can advertise their properties there.
Yes.
Is there anyone seeking to find additional apartments for Go Section 8, or how do they get their listings? By word of mouth, or?
So that's like a third-party site. It's not ours. We don't monitor it. I guess they update it as people list their apartments.
Okay.
I can get more information and share it back, because that wasn't really the greatest answer, but that's all I know. It's not managed by us.
Understood. No, it was that works. How do we determine if a particular voucher is portable or not to another community?
So every voucher that's tenant-based, which is the Housing Choice Voucher Program, is portable. And there are housing authorities throughout the United States, and wherever the family chooses to move to. So let's just say they want to move to Connecticut, they would have to decide where in Connecticut they're looking to move and where there's a housing authority where they're looking to move, and get us all the information where they want their paperwork sent.
Okay. So if an apartment is, for example, $2,800 in a 2-bedroom house, is the landlord obligated to lower the rent for a voucher?
No. So why we do a rent reasonable is because, number one, we want to make sure that that the rents are reasonable and affordable. And we want to make sure that landlords are not charging more for a voucher holder than they would to anyone else. So the rent reasonable determines if the rent is reasonable and if it's similar to what's on the market. So we don't want them to lower their rent, but the family does have to stay within their voucher payment standard.
So this person says they're confused. It was my understanding that if a tenant has Section 8, the landlords can deny because of credit or past tenant issues. Please clarify.
That the landlord can deny?
Correct.
Yes, the landlord can deny based on rental history or credit history. That does not disqualify them from the program. So if the landlord doesn't choose their application because of those issues, we would just give them another application so they can look for another unit.
Can we ask income and credit when accepting applications?
I would say probably not to the income, because this is an income-based program and we've already determined that they're eligible for rental assistance, and we're going to subsidize the difference. As far as credit, they can screen for credit. We just don't.
So if the applicant can't pay the broker's fee or get assistance with the broker's fee, will we get in trouble for not assisting in finding housing? So I'll take that as director of MLS. Basically, that would be a conversation you have up front. And, at that point, you can determine whether or not, you want to work with them or not, based on what it is that you're wanting to do. But can you get in trouble if you sometimes you just have to, do the right thing. But in terms of getting in trouble, I'm not sure how that would necessarily occur. Here's another question. Does your program differ from others in what we can ask?
No. Any voucher program has to be administered with the same HUD rules and regulations. So there shouldn't be any difference.
I like this next question. Can two vouchers from two persons be combined to get a bigger house / higher rent coverage?
I'm gonna say no. I've never seen it and I've never been asked that. I can definitely look, but I would say no.
But the thought is you've got two separate people and they're not married. But
Yeah, but the voucher that they get is going to be for the 2-person household. So it's going to be, it's going to already include that in the sort of the calculation.
And it would, I guess in essence, that would be considered a duplicate subsidy, which is not allowed. So the answer is no.
And there's a question, are there plans to add Section 8 as a rental option in our MLS system? And I don't see it, please direct me if there is one. And, again, it's a source of income. So that's not something that we would necessarily ask per se within the MLS system. It's a form of payment. It's not a property per se. So if an applicant has a voucher for a certain amount and can't go over, and the applicant and landlord make a side deal to pay the difference without Section 8 knowing, and Section 8 finds out, what happens?
So there's rules against that. We would bar the landlord, and the tenant can face termination from the program. It's in the HAP contract, and it's explained when they are briefed for the program that they cannot pay anything outside of what has been determined by the housing authority.
Okay. Well, that is the end of the questions that I am seeing thus far. I'm going to turn it over to you, Tana.
Well, thank you all very much for coming. This really was such an important conversation that needs to be had. And I hope that those that were not able to get on today will watch the video. And the information was very valuable. Jennifer, Marcy, and Wilson, again, I cannot thank you enough for giving up some time today to make sure that we are educating ourselves and our clients as well to provide the American promise. So thank you. And we look forward to seeing everybody at our session number 2, September 15th. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks for
much.
Thank you,
having us.
everyone.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye.